Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Corner. I know it's been a while, my apology, my microphone here just stopped working. So I have to basically contact the manufacturer and get me a new one. But here I am, I'm back, and hopefully I can do some more videos for you. Alright, so in today's video, I'll talk about the difference in cutting injuries between a dull knife and a sharp knife, and to provide a few tips so that you can avoid cutting yourself when you're cooking in the kitchen. Alright, let's get into it. Okay, before I start, I want to ask you a quick question. Which one do you think is gonna hurt more? Being cut by a dull knife or with a sharp knife? Let me know down in the comments section below. Please don't do it. Just use your reasoning and tell me why you think so. Alright, so to answer that question, I will have to say it is a dull knife. Might come surprise to some of you at first, but hear me out. If the severity of the wound caused by both knives are equal, a dull knife will most likely do much more damage than a sharp knife. When a sharp knife cuts through your body just literally got split in half. With a dull knife, instead of being split in half, it basically got torn in half in a sense, because it requires a lot more force in order to break the surface tension and to cut through your body tissue. In doing so, you put extra force on your delicate flesh and your skin and squishing them, which causes more damage from bruising and scratching. A sharp knife movement is kind of like how a royalty moving through a crowded area. Everyone will most likely gonna move out of the way whenever you proceed. So this requires very little effort in order for you to go forward. With a dull knife though, I would say it's kind of like a drunk person in a nightclub crowded with literally everyone, and you suddenly want to use the bathroom on the other end. And so in order to do so, you have to basically push this person aside, squeeze through a couple in front of you, forcing your way throughout the entire sea of people just to move forward. It is very demanding, takes a lot of effort, and that's exactly what happened when you cut yourself with a dull knife. Additionally, how we perceive pain in both situations is different. The way that we can feel that we are in pain is through the nerve. The nerves distribute throughout the body, sending signals to our nervous system telling that, hey, we are currently being injured or we are in pain. Do seek medical attention or something like that. When you get cut with a sharp knife, as I mentioned before, the damage is pretty minimal and it's localized along where your knife cut through in your fingers. With a dull knife, you have a combination of larger cut surface, you have all the extra force that cause squished and bruised tissues. With all those extra force, you can basically create more cracks along that open wound. So essentially, it's like more cracks upon a crack. That's a lot of crack. Okay, I'll stop. So all these combinations can trigger multiple pain responses. It will result in a more painful experience for you. Then on top of that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the healing process, because it is important for our body to be able to heal up from our wounds. It is much easier and quicker for your body to heal when you get cut by a sharp knife, because your tissues get split in half. So it's pretty simple for your body to just glue it back together to kind of just do this. When you get cut with a dull knife, things get complicated. So with the combination of bruised tissues, larger wounds, and extra tears and cracks, your body needs to figure out a way to patch things up And during that healing process, you might end up reopening those wounds just from doing daily activities. So the risk of reopening those wounds increase the likelihood that you will get a bacterial infection, which can lead to a lot more complication, which is something that you would not want to happen when you cut yourself. So if you can, please avoid that. Now with that being said, cutting injuries happens all the time. It is pretty much inevitable if you are using a knife, no matter how careful you are. I have cut myself many times. Some were pretty painful, but most of them are quite painless. But either way, I have some few tips that I learned from my own mistakes that I'd like to share to you. So hopefully you can avoid cutting yourself as often as I did. Alright, so here's tip number 1. So how you want to hold your food on a cutting board is like a clawing pattern like this. The way that it's gonna happen is that imagine this is like something that you're gonna slice. And then you're gonna use your fingertips to grip onto it, but claw back so that your fingers are not directly in the way of your knife. So when your knife slipped, you will not cut yourself, okay? The knuckles that you see right here, it is going to be the guide that is separating your knife from your fingers. There is a small gap in between the blade and your fingernails and fingertips. So if it happens that your knife slipped, it will end up cutting the air and not your fingers. If you hold it just like most people who are new to the kitchen would, like this, there's literally no gaps to prevent your knife from cutting yourself. Like if it slipped, your fingertips are gone. So that I would not want that to happen at all. Now many of you might wonder, like if you hold it like this, like wouldn't your knuckle be in the way of the knife when you're cutting? So from my experience, it has not happened to me. When you are cutting, most of the time you just want to do little small strokes instead of like a very large movement, like kind of whacking something. So in most situations, your knife will not raise that high to basically slip onto your knuckle. Alright, so here's tip number 2. Prevent your food from moving around. This is important especially for rounded things like carrots, mushroom, tomatoes, etc. These tend to roll around a lot when you're trying to hold it down to cut, and you can avoid this by making a flat surface. Cut a small slice of the food out from the edge that you might think not that pretty, and then use that slice area as the base to sit your food on so that it doesn't roll around too much. Alright, so tip number 3 is that if you have a hard time slicing slippery food like a tomato, try to use the pointy tip of a knife, poke it with the tip to make a little hole, and just drag it along a little bit to create a small incision, and then use that incision as the guide to push your entire blade through. Alright, so for my last 2 tips is not necessarily tips, but it's my general advice on cutting. Alright, so first of all is to use a cutting board. Why did I say this? It sounds very redundant, but I have seen many people in my first year of university especially do extremely dangerous things like using their palm or their fingers as the cutting board. And I'm like for the sake of your safety and for my sanity, use a freaking cutting board, please. Like why do you want to risk your own hands and fingers for like an apple or just a few slices of cucumbers. Like, seriously, is that gonna be worth? Alright, so tip number 5 is that if you find it uncomfortable to cut certain food, just don't try to wing it. Ask someone for help or ask Google. There's a lot of resources online that you can find. Take your time, learn the proper way. Don't put yourself in unnecessary risk because chances are you will most likely injure yourself. Alright, so that's gonna be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and find something useful. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on another episode of The Nerd Corner. Until then, take care now. Some were pretty painful, but most of them are most of them are quite painless.